Ladies and gentlemen, when talking about prenatal psychology, we are essentially talking about memory of intrauterine life and expulsion birth. However, we cannot refer to prenatal memory without mentioning the way in which its activation is achieved. Otherwise, it's like talking about the surface of the moon without mentioning the vehicle that goes us there. One of the ways, and I underline that, one of the ways that can lead us to the activation of past levels of consciousness is the use of psychedelic drugs. Lysergic acid diethylamide, LSD-25, a product of Sandoz pharmaceutical company, has been used during the 60s and 70s as an adjuvant psychotherapeutic means. This substance was known to expand the boundaries of ordinary consciousness. The Greek psychiatrist Athanassios Kafkalides, who was one of the leading researchers in the field, in his treatise, The Knowledge of the Womb, Autopsychognosia with Psychedelic Drugs, mentions the following. Under the influence of the psychedelic drug, any experience of the past, sensorial, emotional, intellectual, and so forth, may be relived vividly. Characteristic and very striking, it's the emotional and physical synchronization which accompanies the revival of childhood, infancy, and fetal life. That is, the subject feels that his body has assumed the dimensions it had at the time of the revived event, and he relieves the emotions of the past period. We should keep in mind that the pharmacodynamic activity of chemically pure LSD depends on the dose one takes. Those who decide to use the drug should know that it is highly active even in minute doses. Doses over 100 micrograms can cause utter confusion and severe agitation. I would like now to tell you about the findings of the experimental clinical research in which Dr. Kafkalides was involved from 1960 until his death in 1987. This research in which Kafkalides was involved from 1960 until his death 1987, these findings concerned the subjective experience of 17 cases suffering from neurotic and or psychotic-like symptoms and phenomena who underwent psychotherapeutic sessions with minute doses of chemically pure psychedelic drugs, LSD, psilocybin, ketamine. The history of the first of the above-mentioned cases was presented at the Fourth World Congress of Psychiatry in Madrid in 1966. Experts from and summaries of the above-mentioned cases are included in Kafkalides' treatise, The Knowledge of the Womb, first published in Greek in 1980, the American edition in 2005, and the Russian edition in 2008. The psychedelics that Dr. Kafkalides used were the following. From 1960 to 97, D-lysergic acid diethylamide, Sandoz. From 1970 to 1972, psilocybin, Sandoz. From 1973 till 1987, ketamine hydrochloride, Park Davis. Kafkalides used this pharmacon in good faith, firmly believing that the meaning of the term psychedelics expresses their pharmacodynamic activity. The term psychedelic was coined by Humphrey Osmond, a British psychiatrist working in Canada in the 1950s. Psychedelic is a Greek word, psychodilotiko, mind manifesting, meaning something which manifests or exteriorizes the content of the psyche. It is worth noting that the experiences and conclusions of the 17 cases had certain common elements, no matter what psychedelic they had taken. Now, let's come to the revival of experiences of intrauterine life and language. All 17 cases claimed that during their fetal life, they were conscious of their existence in the following sense. Every fetus felt himself to be surrounded by something colossal, which aroused in him either chaotic terror or blissful serenity. One may ask, how is it that during sessions one can describe the experiences of a period, intrauterine or expulsion birth, during which one did not have the ability of language? The 17 cases answered in the following way. Their intrauterine experiences left memory traces within body and nervous system. The reactivation of the memory traces by the psychedelic resulted in the revival of these intrauterine experiences which they expressed with various phrases and gestures, which they learned after expulsion birth and which they felt were applicable to the revived experiences. In addition to the above, we must take in account Chomsky's theory of language. Chomsky believed that language is innate, or in other words, we are born with a capacity for language. Language rules are influenced by experience and learning, but the capacity for language itself exists without environmental influences. This is the theory of Chomsky. Thus, the 17 identified the colossal thing surrounding them as the womb. The womb then was their first external environment and then first acquaintance with life. Thus, the womb became a permanent base of reference. The chaotic intrauterine terror felt by some of the 17 was caused by the emotional disturbances of the woman in whose womb they were developing. What were these emotional disturbances? First, the pregnant woman's emotional rejection of the sex of the fetus. Second, the pregnant woman's emotional rejection of the fetal presence. Third, the fear, anxiety, or terror of the pregnant woman caused by factors unrelated to the fetus within her. Example, sudden bad news, social and environmental stresses, sexual rape by the husband or any other man, and so on and so forth. Chaotic terror was also felt by some of the 17 during the revival of their expulsion birth and their first contact with the deadly, dangerous chaos of the universe. It is interesting to note that these cases felt the process of expulsion birth as a deliberate rejection from the part of the womb mother. After expulsion birth, now we come to the mechanism of mental disturbance as it was presented by Kafkalides. After expulsion birth, any stimulus which contained even the slightest element of rejection could reactivate the memory traces of the rejecting womb and chaotic terror. The mechanism of the development of mental disturbance is based on the following process. A neuronal process which plays a most important role in the way the subject's nervous system is activated by stimuli is this. Every rejecting stimulus tends to make unconscious primitive fear conscious. Because conscious primitive fear is an unbearable symptom, the existential identity tries to hinder or equilibrate the processes mentioned with all the means at its disposal. Among these means are the various clinical pictures of mental disturbances, nervous tension or neurotic symptoms and phenomena, or psychotic-like psychotic symptoms and phenomena. The basic cause of the clinical pictures of mental disturbance is fear, which escalates because the quality of the rejected stimuli causing the fear changes. The 17 cases mentioned above describe different qualities of fear, which Dr. Kafkalides classified as follows. Specific fear. This fear occurs after expulsion birth. It has specific causes which the subject is aware of. Anxiety. This agonizing fear is accompanied by a vague threat of the existence. Its cause is unconscious. 3. Primitive terror. Kafkalides used this term to characterize the chaotic fear which some of the 17 felt during their intrauterine rejection or the rejection of expulsion birth. All 17 cases stated that conscious or unconscious fear was behind most of their everyday activity. The external environment, the everyday world, represents the original external environment of the womb. This will of the womb was the main cause of depression of the 17 cases. Let me now return to those individuals while reviving their intrauterine life, felt themselves to be filled with and surrounded by blissful serenity. These cases felt that this blissful serenity resulted from the womb's acceptance of their existence and sex. And after expulsion birth, any accepting stimulus could reactivate the memory traces of this intrauterine security and serenity. I would like to stress here that the accepting or rejecting quality of a stimulus depends entirely on the subjective judgment of the case. Now, let us come to another major emotional realization made by the 17 during sessions. Sexual activity, and particularly orgasm with a womb substitute, emotionally symbolizes returning to the womb, be it rejecting or accepting. Why is a womb substitute necessary? Because the individual cannot return to the original uterus. A womb substitute, by the way, may be a woman, a man, an object, and so on. The return to the original uterus was felt by all 17 cases as an imperative emotional need. Why an imperative need? Because the womb is the first external environment, the womb is the first acquaintance with life, the womb provides immortality through the offspring, and the womb provides safety for the accepted and the rejected as well. Now, the interpretation of the above realizations. How does a man return to the womb through sex? In this way, during ejaculation, some of his cells, spermatozoa, return to the symbolic womb of the substitute. As one case said, in sex, I take the path of my expulsion birth, but in reverse. In so doing, I return to the secure womb. How does a woman return to the womb through sex? Two female cases explain the return to the womb through sexual activity, which resulted in pregnancy as follows. During their pregnancy, they identified simultaneously with their mother and with the fetus within them. In other words, they were the fetus in their mother's womb. For these women, orgasm is a temporary state similar to the conditions of pregnancy. During orgasm, the same double identification as in pregnancy occurs. Other women who had never been pregnant felt the orgasm directly reactivated the conditions of their intrauterine life. If the womb substitute now in sex reactivates the accepting womb, then the result is serenity. If, however, the womb substitute reactivates the rejecting womb, then sexual problems arise, highly unpleasant and painful emotional sensorial experiences during coitus, which intensify as orgasm approaches and result in the inhibition of orgasm and severe anxiety. Orgasm without pleasure, depression following orgasm, premature ejaculation, masturbation, sadomasochistic activities, activities involving fetishes, obsessional acts, and so on and so forth. In his last lecture given at the University of New South Wales, Sydney, in December 1983, Kafkalides said the following. Of course, Cartesian scientific methodology will ask, what are the objective criteria that prove that the intrauterine experiences mentioned are true and are not the result of perceptual distortion? The unpleasant fact known to all of us is that bioneurophysiology does not have at its disposal means by which it can check the quality and intensity of human emotions. There is no apparatus which might measure the degree of human sorrow or psychic pain. There is no apparatus which might measure the degree of truthfulness of what a person says about a past experience of his, be it what he ate 24 hours ago, or the revival of an experience of his intrauterine acceptance or rejection. In the final analysis, what was said by the 17 was a personal matter of theirs. As far as Dr. Kafkalides was concerned, he either had to discard their claims believing that they were hallucinating, or to accept them because he considered them true. Well, from 1960 to 1965, Kafkalides shared the general opinion that a case under psychedelic was hallucinating. From 1965 on, he became convinced that psychedelics reactivate the memory traces of past experiences, and so he concluded that what a case experiences and says under psychedelic is for him a subjective truth. Dr. Final observations and remarks concerning the therapeutic results of pharmaceutical autosognosia sessions. First, the cases that did not show any improvement after the session with psychedelics had not revived even a moment of acceptance. A second observation is that the greater the proportion of intrauterine acceptance, the better the therapeutic results after the sessions. Conclusion, the prognosis of the psychotherapeutic results for the 17 cases depended on the presence or absence of memory traces of intrauterine acceptance and the ratio of acceptance to rejection. 62 years later, 50 years after Dr. Kafkalides' clinical research and 30 years after the publication of his treatise, 3 articles appeared almost simultaneously in prestigious magazines in 2010. That means 12 years ago. On September 14, 2010, an article appeared in New Scientist entitled "Recreational Drugs Go Straight" by Catherine Delange. She comments on the state of the 40-year silence and research hiatus surrounding LSD and MDMA, saying that today many researchers believe that these psychoactive drugs are not dangerous to health when administered in a controlled environment, and state that the issue of therapeutic use of LSD must be started again. On October 2, 2010, always the same year, in a long article in the New York Times entitled "At Risk from the Womb," Dr. Christoph writes, there is evidence that mental illness is partly related to what happened in the womb decades ago. The same month, October 4th, 2010, Time magazine was released with a title on its cover, "How the First 9 Months Shaped the Rest of Your Life, the New Science of Fetal Origins." Catherine Monk, an assistant professor of psychiatry at Columbia University, has advanced an even more startling proposal that a pregnant woman's mental state can shape her offspring's psyche. Research indicates that even before birth, mother's moods may affect child development, Monk says. Can maternal mood be transmitted to the fetus? If so, what is the mode of transmission? And how do such moods affect fetal development? These are new questions to be asking, she says. We're still figuring out how to get fetuses to answer. And yet, the embryos answered 50 years before Time asked this question. Today, in 2022, many researchers tend to confirm that the fetus has consciousness and mental disorders are related to intrauterine life. Kafkalides' findings and those of 2 other psychiatrists, the Czech Stanislav Grof and the English Frank Lake, who using psychedelic drugs in psychotherapy reached similar conclusions regarding fetal consciousness, will not be long in being accepted, I think. Moreover, psychedelic drugs are slowly but surely making a comeback as an adjuvant psychotherapeutic means. At this point, I would like to refer to Freud's words. In his book, An Outline of Psychoanalysis, we read the following. The future, writes Freud, may teach us to exercise a direct influence by means of particular chemical substances on the amounts of energy and their distribution in the mental apparatus. It may be that there are other still undreamt of possibilities of therapy. Kafkalides and I commented on these thoughts of Freud in one of our last discussions. His comment was as follows. If Freud had had the psychedelic drug at his disposal, he would probably have reached similar results as ours. Kafkalides' communique in Madrid in 1966, which for the first time linked psychoactive drugs as a cause of intrauterine memory reactivation, presenting at the same time an interpretive theoretical framework, led to the reversal of the tabula rasa principle. The findings of photosagnosia ran counter the almost schools of psychology, from Freudianism to behaviorism. This opposition also extends to the field of philosophy. From Aristotle, who considered man to be born as blank paper, to Locke, who considered man a blank slate, tabula rasa, the reversal of the tabula rasa principle broadens the concept of unconscious. A partial meaning of the unconscious was given by Kafkalides in the following sense. Unconscious is the sum total of the memory traces which are preserved by the neurons of a nervous system of stimuli which had excited the neurons. Also, included in the unconscious are memory traces inherited from ancestors. Kafkalides' definition of the unconscious includes as well the sexual dimension of the Freudian unconscious, emphasizing, however, the emotional symbolism of sex, that is to say, the emotional need to return to the womb. The above definition also clarifies Jung's concepts of archetypes and collective unconscious. From a philosophical point of view, the overturning of the tabula rasa principle illuminates and clarifies, in one hand, Plato's theory of knowledge. Memory, in Plato's words, is a wax tablet. And on the other, Descartes' innate ideas and Locke's opposing arguments. Concluding our attempt to briefly present the scientific work of Kafkalides, we cannot avoid asking the following question concerning as well the researches of other scientists in the field of prenatal psychology, like Dr. Thomas Verney, Ludwig Janus, John Turner, et alias. When will the academic community accept finally the reversal of the tabula rasa principle? The answer to the question was given 100 years ago by two great scientists. William James, the father of American psychology, in one of his lectures in Boston in 1906, put the matter very clearly by saying, at first, a new theory is attacked as absurd. Then it is accepted as true, but self-evident and without much importance. Finally, it is considered so important that its opponents go so far as to claim that it was they who discovered it. And Max Planck, the German theoretical physicist whose discovery of energy quanta won him the Nobel Prize, said it, I think, most clearly during a speech given to the Kaiser Wilhelm Society, Scientific Society in Berlin in November 1941. He said, a new scientific truth can't establish itself by the mere fact of being accepted by its opponents who claim to have been convinced and enlightened, but furthermore, by the fact that in the course of time, its opponents die and the new generation grows familiar from the beginning with truth. Thank you.